Namastu. We bow to the divinity within all. You are listening to the Holy Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah. And we invite you to take out your pen and a piece of paper. Grab your scriptures and follow along. And dare to ask those questions. And listen as the answers are given. Learn the languages of the scriptures. The Aramaic, the Hebrew, the Hieratics, the Arabic, the Greek, the cuneiform, to find those answers.
Please bear in mind, this is Africa. We're still in Africa, right? Though they want us to believe we're not. Their dynasties, that whole concept of dynasties, there were no African dynasties. Why do I say that? And a lot of Egyptologists are going to disagree with what we're saying. But the reality is we couldn't be dynasties because the word Dionysos is Greek. The moment you say dynasty, you're speaking to Greek invasion. No African ruler or pharaoh or queen, as you're called today, would have ever called themselves a dynasty because Dionysos is a Greek god. The moment you say Dionysos or dynasty, you're speaking to the Greek invasion. They have a whole tour here. Egypt, faith after the pharaohs. And you can come and see it for 10 pounds, I think it is. And if you go to Egypt after the pharaohs, or faith after the pharaohs, this is when they brought in their faith systems and their concept by taking your original Tamadean spirituality and rewriting it. We're going to see that on the second floor in what they're calling Egypt. Notice the carvings down here and how they're exposed, and we're going to go upstairs and we're going to look at paper mache and little pieces of wood and cardboard boxes painted up to look like them, put inside of glass cases to give us the illusion that there's a superior thinking. But what we're going to see upstairs in Egypt, much of it is this. Now let's attributed it to them and called themselves the tribes of Europe, and then took the name Dionysos and gave it to you and me, and then thereby able to steal our history. See, I can steal your history if you embrace my terminology. Like we said at the beginning, the moment I change your concept of time and language and direction, I got you. The moment we say dynasty, then we're making it as if Tamade was this one land ruled by one individual as opposed to one land ruled by many individuals who work together for one purpose. You follow? So they'll say, for example, if you say 12th dynasty, the 12th dynasty was Akhenaten, Amenemhet. But the 12th dynasty, if you said 12 tribes, what would you then think? What would you think? You would think original people of the Bible. But if I can get you to remove the word tribe and put dynasty, then you disconnect yourself as the chosen people. And you separate. And this is what Dr. Ben was trying to tell us. He kept saying, kept saying, my grandmother's from Yemen. We were better Israel. Many Egyptologists who quote Dr. Ben, who quote Dr. Clark, who quote Sheikh Ntijak, don't address that those three men spoke to the relationship of black people to the original tribes of the Bible. The original Bible. Egyptologists today act like they never said that, though you're reading the books by Dr. Ben, The Necessity of a Black Bible. You follow? So you were the original tribes, but once I give you dynasty, you disconnect. And then say the Egyptian dynasties enslaved the tribes of Israel. When the tribes of Israel, of Israeli today, were the invading dynasties who enslaved you. And that's what we're trying to make clear. Not that there's no terminology dynasty, but it cannot apply to you and me because we didn't speak Greek. So Amenemhet, Akhenaten never would have said Dionysos. The moment you use Greek terminology or Roman or Latin terminology, you're admitting to Roman and Greek invasion. You follow? And that would be like today us saying, I'm a Jew, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim. I'm grabbing Arab, Armenian, European terminology. If I say I'm a Kharestian, now I'm identifying with the Kharest. But the Kharest comes out of Kemet. That takes me to a place. Christian takes me to the Vatican. Muslim takes me to Saudi Arabia. Jew takes me to Israel. You follow? Kharestian, Atonist, Tamadean. Those terminologies take you always back to where you're from. And words are very important because words set things in motion. Words either destroy or they build.
Yes.
So if we're using deconstructive words, then we will never be able to construct. We'll never be able to build or see ourselves out of the situation. Though they taught us sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But words have hurt us the most. We've been more hurt by the words. We're so focused on the word nigger or nigger that we're missing all the other words that they've moved around. The word Egypt in itself is a farce. That's Greek invasion. Aegyptos. Aegyptos means to burn. None of us here have ever burned. We've tanned, we've gotten darker, but we've never burned. The moment we say Aegyptos, you're saying Greek invasion. The people of Tamade of that region would have never called themselves Aegyptos, ever. There will be Tamadeans, there will be Kemetians, there will be Aksamites, there will be something else, but not that. And until we identify with whatever that was before, we're in trouble. Let's go down this way. Now, the concept of a man being placed on a cross, I want you to get that in your mind, right? Of an individual being placed on a cross to die for you. If this sarcophagus is known as a what again? See if you remember. Neb-Ankh. The Neb-Ankh has her inscribed on it. So she's placed on a, if the Ankh is the original cross, and she's placed on the Neb-Ankh, she's placed on a cross. And there were 3 crosses that come up every night in the cosmological chartings. Southern Cross. What's the other one? Diamond Cross. And there's another cross that comes up every night called Crucifixion. These 3 crosses, or literally crucifixion, these 3 crosses point to the Orion's belt. And they always wear these sashes to symbolize the Orion belt. Because all ancient melanin societies or indigenous cultures were focused on bringing heavenly energies or centripetal energies down to earth to balance the heavens and the earth, the Geb and the Nut, the Yin and the Yang, the Feng Shui, the decadal, the male and female, the positive and negative. Every culture, every ideology has a way of describing it, but they were all saying the same thing. And in your burial rituals, you were placed on an Ankh. So you had this whole precept of giving your life and have to be placed on an Ankh. Someone took that, rewrote it, and put Zeus on the Ankh. And removed the female, and then took the female circular part of the Ankh, like on this gentleman's hat, and they put it as a halo around his head. And give it back to you. Fair enough? Let's go this way, please. You can go around. Freemasonry, the feet stands, the original Sandi or matriarchal sacred societies. Now, why would you go on Facebook? You. It might look like you. Not might look like you, in fact would look like you. Okay? Now again, glass case, so this must be important.
Yes, I'm happy you're stopping there.
Yeah, you got to stop here and see this important thing that's in this glass case. But look at here. In Greek mythology, the Sphinx was a monster with the head of a woman. No, the Sphinx was a monster with the head of a woman. So what are you doing? You're demonizing female. This whole thing is about, if you demonize the female, you demonize the matriarchal societies. A woman bleeds, ooh, nasty, oh, she's cursed. A man bleeds, he saves you through his washed in blood of his lamb. But all of us came out of blood, out of water, the amniotic sac. That we hate. But the man who goes on the cross and bleeds, that we love. Someone's doing something to the mind. Right in front of us. Right? So this must be important.
What I read here is that, like you're saying, they're saying here, in Greek mythology, the Sphinx was a monster.
Right.
But in contrast, in Egypt,
That's right.
it was
A symbol of royal power. Right. But remember, anything that identifies with you, cinematography always makes it bad. Think about that. Anything that identifies with you is demonized. Anything that identifies with them is spiritualized. The way our kinesis or our sacred places, I don't want to say temple, because then again, temple takes us back to Rome, because templars. Every time you use their words, you're bringing them back into your story. So in our ancient structures, our ancient mirats, our ancient kinesis, our ancient places, observatories, we had structures that told a story. We always deified the bull. The bull was always male and female. There's no one creature in Kemet or in Tamade that's only identified with either a male or female. The bull could be Hathor, and then there's the Apis bull that could be Munpu. They both exist in Kemet, and they both work side by side in those regions where the cow was used to do what? Plow the field. Why? Because we saw the plowing of the field as a terrestrial manifestation of the man who plows the field in the heavens. Is there a person who plows the field in the heavens? Yes, you call it Boots. Bootes. And Boots, the constellation, is preceded by Arcturus, and Arcturus is known as the great plowman. And Arcturus always worked in conjunction with the Sahu. Sahu you call today Orion. And all of our societies, remember, we were bringing heavenly forces to earth. Thy kingdom come on, as it is in, as above, as within. So we understood that everything that was happening in the celestial heavens, we had to manifest constructions on earth to do the same thing. Japanese culture has it, the 3 sacred trees, and how they move the imperial palace. Every year they move a portion of the imperial house. They couldn't knock off enough notes. You follow? This was a Nubian, a Cushite, a melanin person, someone looking like you, thinking like you, having a spiritual connection like you, who understood that you are not a physical being seeking a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being, a divine being, having a very human experience. In order that you be able to identify where hurt and pain exists, to be able to move and assist those of your own. Everything you're going through is not to punish you. You go through life. Life's purpose is to live. And the things you experience allows you to be able to talk to those who will then experience similar things and help guide them. And this made you physicians and doctors and psychiatrists and whatever terminology that the words have created today, but we had the same thing in our time. Here's this Cushite again. Wahibri. Notice what he has inside. You see this in the Catholic Church. Same symbolism. The Nazarene, we call them. The Nazarite. Say Nazarite. Say rites of Nazar. Rites of Nasir. Nasir, Asad, Usir. The language is always the same. The phonetics changes. The dialects change, but the language is the same. This is, so which is first? You had this 25,000 years ago. The Catholic Church has only had it since 325 in and around. So where'd they get it from? The Pope got his hat from downstairs. Yeah. They got this from upstairs. Let's see what else we're going to find today. Oh, they're ignorant, right?
Yeah, they would say, oh, that's not black, that's white.
If you go to Amenhotep, the first structure over there is
nose missing.
Yeah.
No, the nose is there.
It's there. Because they could sand it. Well, because they could sand it. Huh? They sand it.
Yeah, even if they did that, the fact is that's
and easy. Right.
People are looking statue.
And so they'll keep it.
Yeah.
We know. But what symbols do we see again? The Ankh and the Tet. Tet is the symbol of acid, symbol of blood, symbol of mitochondrial DNA. Z pillar, symbol of the spinal column. They call it the Z pillar of Asaru, Osiris, Usir. The Watcher. Tet, Aset, the throne. This individual that's wearing this, male or female? Female. Many of the cultures, they wear the fake beard because the fake beard was a sign of rulership over both male and female. It's horse tail. You know the horse's tail? They take the fur off the horse's tail and they make what's called a dagin. Say Dagon, say Dagon, the fish deity. So some wore the fish hat on their head of Upper and Lower Egypt, the Wadjet and the Ujet they call it, and others wore the Dagon. The Dagon sits at an area that modern physicians call the submental. This area here, representing control of the masteries of the lower and higher self. So everything that we were wearing had nothing to do with today. Just like you go to court here and they wear wigs.
That's where it comes from.
The very thing that they're wearing in courts today, guess where it comes from? You call it a namuz. You follow? Now, right, some say namuz, namuz. The namuz, na, us, nihna, all of us. Muz, muzia, the thinking one amongst all of us. So whoever wears the namuz becomes the ruler of thought, the teacher, the pharaoh. They have all these names they want to attribute to people. But notice again, beneath it is who? Ma'at. She always is there, but she's wearing the wings of the ma'at feather, the ostrich. Now people say because an ostrich sticks its head in this ground when it's afraid. That's a myth. Ostrich stick their head in the ground to check on their eggs. and ostriches are extremely fast. The only thing faster than an ostrich is a cheetah. They can run up to 55, 60 miles an hour. Cheetahs can excess 70. But ostriches can run longer than the cheetah. Cheetah can only give you about 300 yards and it's done for the day. You follow? But the ostrich feather was used because the ostrich feather was at the end of every arrow. Or some type of feather because it allows it to cut through wind and guide it to its target. So Ma'at's symbol becomes the feather as a symbol of guiding individuals to the path of yin, yang, female, male, Decker, und, in, out, to, fro, positive, negative. Every culture, every science, every way of saying it, it still said the same thing because all of them were one. There was no separation between biology, anthropology, botany, herbology. They all were one teaching being branched off to different schools like universities do today. University is a what? A universe city. A city that you do what? Study the universe. And the universe is always seen by looking through the womb of a female. So all observatories have a dome. And the dome represents the womb or the breast. Looking through the womb of a female, in Tamaré we call her Nut, and she's outstretched like a dome above the earth.
So on the mosque, like a dome.
Yes. That's the female. Always the female. Can't escape it. Let's continue. Now you'll often see men.
Yeah.
And they'll say fertility deity, Min. His name is Amsu. Say Amsu.
Amsu.
Which is A-M-S-U. Amsu. The name Am means nation. If I say Am or means nation, because Umi, my mother. Am, nation. Su or Zu of animals. Min is always holding the fertility. Matter of fact, what the Europeans of America call Thanksgiving is taken from the festival of Min. But Min represents in nature the time of year you call fall, when all of the leaves have fully fallen off of the trees and are now impregnating earth, fertilizing earth. And once they impregnate earth, these seeds must then be electrically charged by the electrical energies coming from earth called centrifugal. Once they're impregnated and have been electrically charged to fertilize, then they do what? Gestate for 3 cycles, 90 days, until spring comes again. So Min represents holding back or controlling the animal self and not allowing our carnal nature to dominate our mental nature. Because if we only allow, as women and men, and that's why it's female here, allow our carnal nature to rule, most of us as adults know where that's going to lead us, and we've all been down that path. Where the relationships, you go, I can't believe I messed with him or her. You follow? So Min or Amsu symbolizes controlling the lower carnal self, which is still necessary for life, but understanding that if we allow it to dominate us, it will control us and destroy us. Not the way they make it seem. And of course they removed it because it would identify that he was Nubian, right? Okay.
I was going to... I wonder if you're going to pick up...
Yes. I'm sorry?
Moses.
That's Ahmoses. Ahmos. Ahmos and Kamos, two sons of Sekenere Tau.
Sorry, who? This one?
Yes.
No, that's
Ramesses II. Sorry, Ahmos Kamos is on the other side. So Ramesses II.
That's Ramesses.
This is where they get who? Who do they get this from? Where's the story come from?
The Moses story.
Solomon. No, the Solomon
Solomon.
story. Ramesses had 1,000 wives. Solomon had 700 wives, 300 concubines. Married some people outside of his own people. This is the Ramesses story, but they grab this Ramesses story and throw it in the Bible, and he becomes Moses. But Moses would be Thutmose. Thutmose the first, Thutmose the second, Thutmose the third becomes the Moses character that they're combining. Thutmose the first, his daughter is Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut, it becomes Moses' sister in the Bible. They keep grabbing biblical or original African teachings or theology, and they're grabbing names to give themselves a place in history. Because without grabbing, imagine if we removed Egypt, Ethiopia, Libya, Cush out of the Bible, then the Bible doesn't have an ancient history. By identifying yourself with ancient cultures, all of a sudden it makes a non-existent people appear to be existing.
It's said as well that this is the Pharaoh that was contemporaneous with the prophet Moses, in the sense that this is the Pharaoh that Moses asked to let my people
No,
go.
there's a reality.
Yeah.
Thutmose was not asking to let his people go.
Yeah.
The invading Hyksos who call themselves Israeli, do not confuse Israeli with Israel.
Yeah.
Do not confuse Ishmaeli with Ishmael. Ishmaeli are the so-called Indo-Arabs that invaded the land of Arabia today. The Israeli are the Indo or Armenians from the Levantine region of Europe, from the Caucasus Mountain, that invaded. They came in and they infiltrated a region of Africa, a small region called Avaris by then. We called it Hutwaret, where the first oldest temple of Dendera was. This is why the French took the Dendera or the Zodiac and they took it to the Louvre in France. And when they got there were certain tribal leaders or tribal rulers or Pharaohs or pharaohs who were fighting to push them out. You call these the 12 dynasties or the 12 tribes. Ahmos, Kamos, the sons of Sekenere or Senakenre Tau, they fought. That's the most. Most means to be drawn forth or a child. Thutmose is a child of Thut or Tahuti. Ahmos is a child of the Ah, the life force. They were fighting. Ahmos and Kamos in your Bible becomes the book of Ahmos. Is there a book of Ahmos in your Bible? Amos. And if you read in the book of Amos, you find out about Tahaka trying to push the invaders who were coming into the land of Judea. But Judea was Africa. The so-called Jews of the state of Israel, before they went to what they're calling Israel, they first went to Uganda, they went to Kenya, they went to Liberia, they went to Venezuela and were looking for a homeland. So had they been able to establish their homelands in those places, you wouldn't be saying Israel of today is the chosen land. You'd be saying somewhere in Uganda with Idi Amin who pushed them out, somewhere in Kenya, somewhere in Liberia, somewhere in Venezuela. There were many Israeli plans to have a homeland other than where they found it today. Do your homework on it. You'll find out they had 5 other areas before they settled in Israel. So where would, including Guyana. So where would the Holy Land be today had they conquered in Guyana in the early 1940s and 50s? We'd be going to Guyana saying the state of Israel. So is it that the land is holy or the people who claim the land?
The people.
And that's the game. But most of us don't know that they went to 4 other places before they settled in Palestine, Israel. All right, let's continue.
It is Thutmose III.
Thutmose III. What kind of hat is he wearing? The bottom piece. Remember those Zulu women?
It's supposed to be the lower crown of Egypt, but yeah.
The lower crown.
Yeah.
Lower Zulu, South Africa. Female crown.
Yeah. They put him here as Amenhotep III. But before, they used to say they didn't know who he was. That's only been there about 6 months.
Right.
Greatest warrior
But you can't
ever
deny
to come out of Africa.
Can't deny his facial features.
No, you can't. And the only reason why the nose is still on there is because granite is hard to work with.
That's me there. That's me.
Yeah, I know him as well.
African culture, look above, the 2 slabs on the top. On both sides. If you look closely, you see medical symbols. You see molten symbols for working with metals. You see Z pillar. You see sun disk. You see all of these symbols had to do with the tools that you used in your crafts. From physicians to botanists to herbologists, to architects. It was always you had science, you had construction, you had spirituality. None of it was separate from who you were. Someone did a great job in trying to remove the noses and Europeanize them, but you cannot deny their melanin origins.
I'll give you a story of that.
Go ahead, share with us.
So this is Pharaoh Senusret III, and he is 12th dynasty Pharaoh. And up until about
12 tribes, not dynasty.
Yeah,
We got him, we got him now. Go ahead.
up until about 1975, the documents used to say that he tried to ban black people from coming into Egypt.
When in fact,
What happened was Sheikh Anta Diop and
Sheikh Anta Diop, who debated all the Europeans in Cambridge and Oxford and put them in their place as to the African origins of the Nile civilizations.
and Dr. Yusuf Ben Yochanan, they got the original documents, retranslated them, and realized that the Europeans deliberately mistranslated one word, the Egyptian word Nehusi or
Ta-Nehisi.
Right. And basically that one word changed the whole story. So instead of banning black people from coming into Egypt, he banned Nubians because they were at war at the time.
Right.
Can you see the difference? One word has changed, and then the whole story
changes.
And then what their argument was is that the 12th tribe of
Very good.
of Kemet was not African; it was not black.
Right.
So
anything that they can't, anything that cannot be claimed can't be you. Isn't that convenient?
Yeah.
Right. But the aprons that you find in what they call Freemasonry, there's no denying.
Yeah.
But existed way before the Grand Lodge. These African men. Don't touch. No, I'm just playing. Stop. Watch your back.
I'm not boring.
Notice again the wigs. When you go to court, judgment, male and female, side by side, moving, creation, libation, life, sustenance. We always had a relationship with nature. There's no separation from nature. You cannot have a spiritual doctrine without an involvement with nature. What do I mean by that? Remove all the things that nature gives us in the church. There's no pews, there's no books, the books are written on paper, paper comes from trees. The pews are cut from wood, remove that. The granite that's dug up, the stones, the water that you use, the oil that you use for blessings, the bread, the wafers, the wine. We will remove all of nature out of any monotheistic faith. Guess what? It's a real boring service on Sunday. The great doors of Ptah-Hotep. This is found where? Memphis, Het-Kata, Memphite theology. What stone did we see? Other end of the building, Shabaka. And this was the great entrance to your university. Where you went to actually study. Timbuktu was an actual university, 900 AD. Known as the greatest university at the time. Before there was an Oxford and a Cambridge and a Harvard and a Yale and a Princeton, there was a Timbuktu where everyone went to study. 900 AD and did not fall until 1500. So in the last 500 years, you were the premier university of the world. Premier university of the world. Of the world. The world. Everybody went to study from you.
That's why Timbuktu, the actual university, actually looks like the House of Parliament.
That's right. Because the House of Parliament is trying to replicate what they saw at Timbuktu.
The argument is when the Europeans got there and got their teachings, they took as much teachings as possible. This is in the 13th century. They took as much information as possible, Latinized it, and hence Oxford University was born.
Or bleaching. When you bleach it,
That bit they renovated, the top bit they renovated.
oh, you can tell. And you can tell where they tried to do renovations. Because it doesn't match. The materials don't match. Cut me out real quick. Netu Nebo, again with the Uraeus, libations in his hand, bowing. Bee symbolism, because we understood the science of the tetrahedron. The bees and how bees fly and how they use magnetism in the atmosphere to move. We understood this. This was the construction. But who cut this out and why? Now here they'll tell us, enclose a sacred spot in the temple of Atum, creator Netir, at Heliopolis. But Netu Nebu is also found at Memphis. Were they separate cities, or were they degrees of studies that you had to obtain? We cannot allow, like you just said about France and England, just like we can't separate them, we cannot allow them to separate us. We cannot allow them to separate indigenous Caribbean, as they're called, right, or Arawak and Taino cultures of the Caribbean islands, and the people of North America, and the people of South America, and the Indus River Valley, and Africa. We cannot allow ourselves to be separated by their dogmas and their interpretations. We have, if we could speak Chinese and we could walk amongst the Chinese tour group, we're going to hear them explain what they perceive based off of what they believe it to be. If we go to the same European and they go through their tour, they're going to explain it from their perspective. So we have a right to explain our story from our perspective. Fair enough? Mm-hmm. And if they don't like it, that's okay. They can get over it. Mm-hmm. They never asked us how we felt about them taking our relics and then now telling us don't touch it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't touch it, says the man who stole it.
Yeah.
Father of anyone?
Amata.
Who? Kanata.
No, what is it?
And that's Uncle. He built the what? He was the great builder of the first labyrinth, resurrected labyrinth. What is a labyrinth? A circumambulation, where the Muslims get their Hajj, running around a black box called a Ka and a Ba. Ka, African divine spirit, Ba, African divine soul. They circumambulated. The Jews go to the Wailing Wall. The Christians go to the Vatican with St. Peter's Basilica. It's a circumambulation. All throughout London you have roundabouts. And inside of every roundabout there's normally an obelisk. An obelisk is known as a ben-ben. It's an energy center, because energy is neither lost nor destroyed, but simply transferred from one body to the next. So where's all of this energy that we're making every day as we circumambulate the city of London? Who's living off of it or who's utilizing it? Why are we so drained by the time we get home? Someone knows something about removing your symbolisms into their land. He built the labyrinth. The labyrinth is where you get the word Hajj or Haggi. Haggi in the Bible is the book of Haggi, Haggie, or Haggai, Hajj, Haji, Hajj, El Hajj, pilgrimage, the labyrinth. The builder of the great labyrinth.
I thought that was Amenemhet.
Okay, Amenemhet III took the design and rebuilt it. In the Bible, it'll say Solomon took the design of David and rebuilt it. We constantly had to rebuild it in different time periods, because as we were being invaded and fighting off invasions, you'd have to rebuild. So we'll have attributing of different things to multiple individuals because they were in multiple areas of the land. And wherever we went, we resurrected our cosmology or theology.
Saying that all the ben-bens that are around, that
they're there for a reason. Why do they use your architecture and put them in the circle?
They put them in certain places, like especially at ley lines and stuff like that.
At the town center.
Yeah, because there's one in Stratford.
Where's the totem poles in every village in North America? The town center where people gather. Where's the obelisk in Kemet in Aksum? Town center where people gather to circumambulate Washington.
So what is the Washington Monument?
Washington, same thing. Washington is the seat of power.
And in the Vatican.
The Vatican, St. Peter's Basilica. What does basilica mean? Basilicus, serpent.
But then the Vatican is shaped like the Ankh. Oh.
They're using your symbolism to utilize your spiritual power against you. Using your spiritual power against you.
And how are we going to get that?
By just simply re-embracing it.
Getting knowledge of self.
The moment you have the knowledge of who you are and you choose to live it, not just teach it. Teaching is the easy part. Living is the hard part. The moment you choose to live it, that power then activates in you. And they're fearful of that. These basic commandments of truth, conscious morality, are such that if you embrace them with all your mind, all your heart, and all your strength and power, you shall be able to avoid many traps. Traps which often lead to the downfall of many members of humanity. Thereby it is important
that you uphold the true and balanced ways of your angelic genealogy by safeguarding the rights of the true and first faith of all humanity, atonism. O humanity, universal order and the balancement of deeds is long-lasting and also serious, thereby cannot be tampered with. For it having another outside of your personal genealogy or your genetic family paying for what you have done, as this is the only way by which to satisfy the laws of the divine principles of Ma'at. As such, know you that N.A.Ray declares that you not allow universal order and the balancement of deeds to be compromised, as this will encourage further misdeeds, iniquities, and transgressions, leading to humanity being in a state whereby lawlessness and hatred become the norm. Universal order and the balancement of deeds is long-lasting and also serious. Thereby do nothing to another which you would not have done to yourself under similar circumstances.